in the neighborhood. Why do we see much further than we should? You sick of the lies, sick of the lies. Who you gonna call when you get on the line? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Yeah! GLOBEBUSTERS! 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 If there ain't no curve, there ain't no ball. The globe religion's about to fall. We're gonna open your eyes so you can see who you're gonna call if you wanna be free. GLOBEBUSTERS! 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 Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Yeah! GLOBEBUSTERS! GLOBEBUSTERS! GLOBEBUSTERS!
And welcome everybody to GLOBEBUSTERS. We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition, the very first edition of this new season of GLOBEBUSTERS Tech. I'm your host, Zach, Good Times for All, and today we're going to be talking about crystalline knowledge, part 2. As you know, this is Cammie and Karen. I mean, they both really have delved into this topic a lot more than Kyle and I. So you're going to probably be hearing them speaking more and us asking a lot of questions. But yeah, the more I listen to Cammie and Karen talk about crystals and just the cool videos and stuff that they've been finding, I mean, a crystal, in my opinion, is the closest thing to perfection that the creator has made, in my opinion. It is the closest thing to just being, perfect that you can get. And they're gonna explain why here and how much we use them. And we've been using them for, almost 100 years now, like regularly, not just, for certain specific things that normal people, regularly, we've used crystals in all kinds of things. And yeah, it's really, really neat. It's just a really cool topic. But before we do that, we're going to say hello to the panel, and we're going to start off with Miss Karen B. Karen, how was your break from GLOBEBUSTERS Tech? I know you've been going live a lot and not much of a break, but how have you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Just, I feel I've been feeling like going through a spring cleaning, even though it's winter.
I know we have to. In here, it's like, yep, time. Well, that's good. Those are good things, Yeah. When you have those feelings, those are the good ones. So yeah, ride that.
Gotta do it when you feel motivated.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Next up, we have Mr. Kyle Adams. Kyle, how are you doing this evening, sir?
I'm doing really well. Just been going stir crazy, missing y'all.
Yeah,
my fires of ambition have been burning.
Well, yeah, I've been seeing you've been putting out the videos, man. Keep it up.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying
video every day, and my big project lately has been doing Flat Earth News. I've broken it up into 2 different sections this time around. Normally I just do like 1 through 30 all in one video, but this time I've had to break it up into 2 videos because I've been really curious lately as to how the different major Flat Earth channels have been doing, not just on YouTube, but across different platforms. And so we've got Facebook and Odyssey and Rockfin and just everything. And so trying to report on all of that, it just takes an immense amount of time. But it's actually really, really fascinating because in one department, we've got the FE 101 channel, which is like dominated like the YouTube, like most subscribers I've ever seen. At least it used to be until they got shut down and restarted, and they've been building back up again. Nonetheless, like when it comes to how they have done on Facebook, how they have done on YouTube has been like opposite on Facebook, and then other people are just like, I think it was Oliver Ibanez, who has like 1 million followers on Facebook, and yeah, he's doing pretty well on YouTube as well, but still not like 1 million followers on YouTube, which is really interesting to see exactly how that all lines up. Because that was one of the big curiosities I had going into this, was just how messed up is the YouTube censorship. And so this is kind of one of those things that I was hoping I could kind of toss it up and see where it falls. And it's been an adventure. That's all I can say.
Well, anybody who's had a channel and tries to get it out there and all, and, or gets an idea and tries to get it out there, they hear where you're coming from, because it's like every channel is throttled down, it seems.
Yeah. And some people are doing like 2023. Some people had a really rough year, and other people, I'm telling you, they had the best year I've ever seen. Like, you got to see it. It's happening in this next part. That's almost done. I just have a final few touches, but it'll be out in like the next day or two.
All right. Can't wait. And last but not least, we have Mrs. Cammie Nodell. Cammie, how was your break?
How was my break? It was there. It was a break. It was time for reflection, time, to go over things. It was my first holidays without Bob. So it was difficult, but it's good to be back. We are doing the show tonight on like one of my favorite topics. And you might say, what does this have to do with flat Earth? And this is what I say, it has everything to do with flat Earth. It has everything to do with flat Earth, because when you get down to what they are teaching us now, and again, along with the globe theory and what they're taking us in the sci-fi world to, they're taking us away from the real science, the real knowledge that's been there, and they've taken the real knowledge and they've made it to the general public completely woo-woo, mystical. Let's collect crystals, and they're so pretty, and they'll direct the energy, and they'll do this, and
the Philosopher's Stone was a real thing. This used to be the sacred knowledge that everybody was, all the great people were searching for, was in crystals, making your own crystals.
Making your own crystals, and the use of the crystals, because you can use crystals to direct energy, to regulate frequency, to do all kinds of things that I don't know about yet, that Karen doesn't know about yet, because again, the more we learn, the more in awe we are. I can't again begin to tell you just again how perfect nature builds. Again, you can look at it and say it builds humans and it builds plants, and these are all very remarkable. But again, we're not taught to look at the earth that way, and or the ground or rocks. In fact, kick rocks. Just go kick rocks. They have nothing. They have no intelligence, no organization, no anything. They don't matter, again, other than looking pretty and mystical if you want to do the woo-woo thing and look at it. Or if you want to collect them as high-end baubles, that's the other thing, is a high-end bauble, wear them as a little piece of jewelry. They've turned them into like pretty rocks that you look at and shine. But there's technology and there's brilliance in those, and it really, when it comes down to it, is how the world works. And if you want to know, one of the reasons they're hiding, in my mind, why the earth is flat, is they're hiding the way it works. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to go through some old time movies, what we used to know, how smart we used to be about crystals, and the technology that comes from them. And even now, it's so much more advanced now than it was then. But this is 1930s, the 1940s, 1950s that we're going to be showing you clips from. And a lot of these clips are just black and whites and no sound to them. And yet again, they knew and they were teaching that back then. And now, again, if you go to National Geographic and you get a crystal growing kit, you know what they'd sell you? They sell you a mold of different shapes, Karen, that you pour stuff into and it solidifies into that shape.
That's so terrible.
And that is so terrible. I've been looking through and I've been finding some good home channels that are teaching some things. And there is a little bit of good information out there, but for every little bit of good information, because people will be able to say, well, here, I found this channel and they are teaching the truth. But for every little bit of truth they come up with Superman squeezing the piece of coal into the diamond and other nonsense. With that, I don't know if Karen wants to add to it at all. And what I wanted to do is just start. There's a movie that we've played clips at a lot, and I played on my channel. If you've seen it, Aisling 717 in full. But it's just a Bell Laboratories movie from 1958 about, again, how crystals grow. But it's just a good intro. I think if we play it at 1 1/4 or 1.5 speed, into taking you into a little bit more advancement. Some of them, Karen, if you guys watched Karen's show on Monday, she covered this beautifully, and it's so important. I want to recover it again. This is something that needs to be recovered, and people need to stop and think, because we make bricks and build things out of bricks, but nature makes building blocks that we make our building blocks out of. And nature does it so much more eloquently than we could ever dream of doing. And again, it's a creator versus man-made type of scenario. And you can watch them being created. And with that, like, I'll stop and let Karen talk. But welcome to the show tonight.
I don't really have too much to add as far as any of that stuff goes. You pretty much said it. It's just part of, I agree. They're hiding how the realm works, and the key to how it works is in crystals and minerals and in their properties and how they interact with each other. You know, like everything that we build, everything that we've ever made, it all came from the earth. It all started there, right? And everything that we do, we learned from nature. So,
Everything. It's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Okay. So with no further ado, we're going to run this at 1 1/4 speed, and we're going to be stopping when, questions arise and things like that. We'll keep an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions, just go ahead and shout them out, and we will try to answer them at the best of our capabilities. And this is Crystals, Alan Holden, 1958, from RI Archives. Let me know if you can't hear it, okay? In 1958, this came out. So this is almost 80 years old.
Which is again,
almost 70 years old right here.
Which is again basic. The one that was going to follow it, I think, came out in 1938. So this is almost beginner stuff when we take you to the next one. So again, baby learning steps.
I suppose most of you have seen a crystal at one time or another, probably in a natural history museum or in a chemical bottle. Here's an unusually big crystal, dug out of a clay pit in Brazil. Here's a smaller one, broken from the side of a cleft in the rock in Arkansas. But crystals aren't always big, beautiful things like this. As a matter of fact, crystals are everywhere. The salt you use to flavor your food, for example, it consists of little crystals of sodium chloride. You can see their shapes by looking at them through a magnifying glass. Little cubical crystals of sodium chloride. Snow. Here are some enlarged pictures of single snowflakes. Each is a single crystal of water. Here's a crystal I like especially well, probably because I made it myself. It's a crystal of alum. As a matter of fact, you can make a crystal just like it. I put some directions in the film notes in case you want to do it yourself. You buy the alum you need at a drugstore and grow the crystal in a mason jar. If you do this, I'm sure you'll be very much impressed by one thing. The crystal keeps growing.
Pause right there.
for a week.
I just wanted to point out that when I was growing up, as like in the late 60s and early 70s, at the drugstores, they had little things of the chemicals. They also had the heavy oils and things like this. At the drugstore, at the pharmacy, you could get the different chemicals and that, and things to. And we had chemistry sets that were amazing, and you could get replacement stuff for your chemistry sets at the drugstore, right across from the candy counter. But just a little.
And they
brief
used to
back
have
history.
the mortar and pestle as the little logo.
Yes.
Yeah.
But stop there. But I just it's old school.
You can still get alum though, right? Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can definitely get it. We can order it and do things, but you can't walk in across from the things. You
Yeah.
can't. Just like
Yeah.
again, I remember we used to make.
It was
our own
different back
toothpicks
then.
with
Yeah.
oils. It was different back then. And again, the chemistry sets that I grew up with don't exist anymore, and that's
No, they
really
didn't
really
exist
a shame.
really when I went to school. We didn't get to play with anything at all.
Oh.
That's why I couldn't stand science and physics and all that stuff, because it was all math. That's all they wanted me to do was math. It's like, dude, I know math. All right, I get straight A's in math. I'm not doing math for you here.
No, I had chemistry sets. I loved chemistry sets. I liked making stink bombs, and we had, and I would make the bomb things on it. I grew up on Cherry Street, and so we were the Cherry Street bombers for our go-kart, and then we'd make little bomb smoky things to go on the edge of it for our Cherry Street bombers. But yeah, little cherry bombs. But again, that was just a basic. You did that with kids. You made things. We did stuff like that as kids, and I lived to tell. I lived to tell. 59 and lived to tell.
Yeah, back before all these computers and screens everywhere, right? Yeah,
Yep, different time.
getting outside and being adventurous, that's the way to go. Yeah. So it looks like he's doing like a sugar crystal kind of a thing, but he's doing that with this alum. And is the entire crystal made out of alum?
It is. He's making a super saturated slurry. Is that the way?
Mhm.
way to-
Yeah, here we'll play it. And
Yes,
he'll
we'll play it,
explain
yes.
it.
It keeps getting bigger, but all the time, it has plain faces, meeting in sharp edges. You can see I haven't ground the faces on this crystal or polished them at all. This is just the way the beast grows. It almost seems as if you were getting something out of nothing, something with a shape all its own, which it decides.
Yes, Ken Wheeler, things do draw in straight lines.
In order to grow a single perfect crystal as big as this, you have to take pains and let everything happen slowly. But you can see what's actually happening by letting things happen a little bit faster and looking at the business under the microscope. I'm going to take a solution of alum, which is just itching to deposit crystals, and make a little pool of it on the microscope slide, and then add a few little crystals of alum to give the alum something to deposit on. And then get myself in focus and let her rip. There they are. You can actually see them grow if I turn now to a higher magnification. The little crystals keep pretty much the same shape as they grow, just getting bigger. Naturally, they all sit down on the microscope slide on one of their biggest faces. So you see the.
It's really strange to me when I think about the difference between crystals and glass, and how glass isn't a crystal, but yeah, water turns into a crystal when it freezes.
Mm-hmm.
That's really strange.
Yeah. You're muted,
As-
Zach.
Yeah, as things turn to solids, that is in nature, they take organization, they take perfect organization. And the more we look and learn, the more perfection you're going to see in it. Glass is completely unorganized. Glass is pretty much a hard form of water. It has
like,
the properties of a
magma.
liquid. Same with magma. But other than like few things, I mean, there are a few things on Earth, natural obsidian, lava, your magma and that are solid. Most things that solidify in nature take on perfect shapes and crystal. They organize. That is, crystallization is organization. A lot of the times your granites that are a whole bunch of little different ones together that grow together and compact. But again, they grow out of a supersaturated slurry. Is the pretty much
Oh yeah, granite is crystal, and then sand is crystal.
quartz, mica, and feldspar. Yeah.
Quartz, yeah. I mean, most of the
Every-
earth is crystallized. Just some
Salt
is
and
really,
salt
really
is a
small.
crystal, and if you like look online, you can look up those big salt caves where the everything, the whole entire place is salt. The walls are salt. You know,
And I have a
everything, the
beautiful-
floors, the ceiling, the whole thing.
Yeah, but glass is defined as something as non-crystalline. So sand is crystal, but when it gets melted down into glass, it's no longer crystal. What?
Well, it's when it's when it's changing from the melted and having time to cool it at the correct, again, when the temperature happens, when the right conditions happen, and it changes over, just like again in clouds as they turn to snowflakes because the temperature happened, and now you have them growing. In other words, growing out of that super saturated slurry we call clouds in the sky. The temperature happened, and it causes them to switch over. So again, when your conditions, temperature is a huge, huge codependent in crystallization, of course. It's at what temperature it will like cross over from a liquid to solid. And if it holds, so like, again, my theory or my thoughts are, looking at your basalt columns and just the way crystals grow in that is lava, again, when it melts, when it's cold, exposed to cold too quickly, you have lava. But if it's actually maintains a heated and has a slow enough condition to grow in, you get your pillars. I mean, you do that that's macro over what you see micro over and over again.
Yeah, it's a slow cooling. It's effect of the slow cooling, similar to like when you see like a lake bed that gets super saturated and it's all muddy. And then as it slowly dries out, I mean, not as perfectly as the basalt columns because it's a different material, but even that will crack and form hexagonal forms in the surface, you know, as it contracts, because it's, you know, heat makes things expand, right? So then as it's contracting, you know, it's like contracting equally in all these different places, and it causes that hexagonal pattern.
I'm gonna have to go order some of those polarized filters so I can go and compare crystal with glass, and yeah, just kind of do a lot of these comparisons as to kind of the difference between the two, because I think it's really remarkable. And when I think about that, I really like to speculate about what the firmament might be made out of. And for me, it's like I'm thinking crystal, but then other times I'm thinking, well, I think sometimes it's described as glass-like, and so that's very, very different from crystal. So yeah, kind of
Not really.
It's
not really that different from crystal.
Well, is glass polarized the same way? Or
in other words,
no. It says
like
because
the same way.
in scripture
Glass-like.
it'll say flat, like a mirror, like a looking glass, right? Well, crystals will grow and they'll have flat faces. So it's not, you know, it's similar but different. I guess it depends on the way you're looking at it.
If you're looking at it, in other words, if you look at this, Kyle, you look at this and this looks glassy to you, right? It looks glass-like. So somebody describing it, not understanding that nature produces crystals, would say it looks, you know, glass-like. But nature produces glass much, much more rarely. In other words, glass is the anomaly for it to cool at that. That's something that we control. We cool rapidly and do it. That's in nature, it organizes itself. So I would say that the firmament probably in nature, because if it's a solid and a natural solid, and again, when we start looking at the different properties they have, I would say crystalline nature is going to be almost a given. Just Occam's razor, you have over 95% of the solid material is naturally crystalline, and I'm going to say on that because of the properties it possesses, it's highly intelligent and organized.
Yeah. One of the many things.
The next video will blow your mind, Kyle. So we're going to listen.
Speculating. That's all I can really do, because I can't really go all the way up there and touch it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and wait, and again, the next one I think will put some light on it too.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
The shape of the crystal depends mostly on what the crystal is made of, and not on its size, so long as it's free to grow in all directions. Now, crystals don't only grow out of solutions. They grow out of gases. Snowflakes, water crystals grow that way. And one of the most important places where crystals grow is out of melted materials when you cool them. Here I've got another powder you can get at the drugstore called Salol, which melts to convenient temperature. I'll put a little of it on a microscope slide. Then I'll carry it over here to the hot plate and melt it. And now let's go over here to the microscopes. There's one growing, turning very slowly in the liquid as it grows, because it hasn't quite sat down on the slide yet. It seems almost to push those flat faces ahead through the part that's still melted. Of course, you know that the whole crystal isn't moving and shoving its front along. The liquid next to the face is becoming solid and adding itself to the face. But it's doing this in such a way that the stuff added on also forms a flat face, so the crystal keeps its shape while it grows. Now, I'll melt this back carefully on the hot plate so as to leave just a little rounded blob of crystal. That rounded blob will be a single crystal, but it won't have flat faces. And I want you to see.
And it does it over and over and over again. Like you melt it down, it dries out, and it forms that same shaped crystal again.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me that's not intelligence right there.
It's the original programmable matter.
It's just, wow. How does it? Big shout out to Nathan. Commercial sound and video there, and Effie Nation. Gifting GLOBEBUSTER memberships. Thank you very much, brothers. We love you guys. Really appreciate it. Yeah, that just blows my mind that you can take these things. It's just like the water and the snow, you know. All it is the water from the lakes and stuff like that going up and then falling back down in crystals.
Mm-hmm.
The sky drops crystals on us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like the creator just shouting out, look at, you know, little
And as
clues.
children, we were in
everywhere.
awe of it. As children, we let them lay on our black coats or whatever and take look at it just in complete awe. We don't even look at snowflakes anymore. We don't look at them. We don't look at how perfect they are. But we will have we got some old time snowflakes and salt growing.
Was he describing some round crystals?
Well, he's going to make it a round blob.
He's going to make it
he's
turn
melting it
partial
again.
blob.
Okay. Yeah. I think I've heard of crystal glasses before. And so these are structured things that are molded. I don't know if that's any different. Yeah. That's kind of a
lead crystal in that. Again, you have an organization to it. And again, that's why you'll get the tones and things. That's why you'll pay more for crystal glasses than wine glasses and that. Yeah.
So that's not glass, it's crystal?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I wonder how those
it's
are made.
crystal. It's crystal where it has a higher content. It's glass that has a higher crystalline content in the mixture, which makes it a different quality of glass. Because glass,
the way
you can make
that they
different types of
process
glass.
it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So crystal, that kind of glass will have more quartz in it, and it'll get that hexagonal structure in it, and it makes it's just a better type of glass. It's got more clarity in it. Probably because of the more organized structure of the molecules.
Interesting. I'd like to, I'll have to check that out and look at how that's made one of these days.
All right, here we go.
What happens when this cools down again under the microscope? There it goes, growing the faces it wants to have, filling in the hollows and squaring off the rounded corners so that its boundaries are all flat again. Notice now what happens when two crystals bump into each other, so to speak. They don't push each other around, they just stop growing where they meet because they've used up all the stuff to grow with there. So the boundary between two crystals isn't necessarily one of the natural faces on either of them. The boundary line just depends on how the crystals happen to come together. When the whole thing is finally frozen, you have a dense mass of crystals. Maybe no single one of them shows any of its natural faces, but the whole mass is made up of crystals just the same. Almost all rocks are made up this way. Granite's a good example. Here's a hunk of it. Let's take a close look at it. You can see grains of the different colored minerals which make up granite. Here's a grayish grain of quartz. Here's a grain of pink feldspar. And the little black flecks are grains of a kind of mica. And each of these grains will be a single crystal. Notice that the three things don't mix together in the solid. They crystallize out in separate grains. Before I get through, you'll begin to see why. When you came in, I was melting some bismuth in a crucible over here, and it's been cooling. And crystals ought to have formed on the sides of the crucible, so that when I pour off the part of the bismuth that's still melted, you can see them. Sometimes you can show up the crystals in a finished piece of metal by polishing the surface and then etching it carefully with something that will eat away the metal. Here's a cast brass door handle, which the manufacturer polished, and then over the years, the sweat on people's hands etched it, and now you can see the boundaries between some of the crystals which make up that door handle. In most pieces of metal, the crystals are much smaller than these crystals because they've been broken up when the metal was drawn or rolled or hammered into shape. But the metal is crystalline just the same. Well, so almost all solid things are made of crystals. In fact, if you ask a physicist these days to define a solid, he'll probably say a solid is a bit of matter that is crystalline. Of course, that doesn't seem to get him very far, because somebody is sure to ask, what do you mean by crystalline? But he's got an answer to that one. The answer comes in two parts. The first part says all matter is made of atoms. The second part says in crystalline matter, the atoms are arranged in regular order. I want to talk a little more about what he means by this and show you a little of the evidence for it. The idea is that the crystal is a pattern of atoms, a regularly repeated pattern of atoms, like the regularly repeated pattern of a wallpaper. If the atoms were flat and made a two-dimensional crystal, they might be taking up an orderly arrangement, like this arrangement of pennies on the table. In 3 dimensions, they might be making an arrangement like these bearing balls, closely packed together. Of course, these close-packed arrangements aren't the only arrangements the atoms might take. They're just simple examples of what I mean. Now, already, perhaps, you can see what these two ideas, the idea that a crystal is made of little units, atoms or molecules, all alike, and that those little units are arranged in the crystal in a regular array, you can see how those two ideas would explain what you've been looking at under the microscope. For instance, those alum crystals kept their symmetrical shape as they grew. Now suppose you had a two-dimensional crystal, like with a pattern of atoms like the arrangement of pennies. There are more atoms in solution all around it. But since the arrangement is symmetrical in the crystal, you expect pennies to add themselves on at the same rate here, and here, and here, and so on, because conditions are the same at all those places. The crystal will grow symmetrically and keep its shape, so long as nothing gets in the way and prevents more atoms from reaching the surfaces.
I wanted to say that this is really significant because it has a lot to do with the way just rocks form in general. When you understand just how quickly rocks can form, it just tosses so much of the earth is billions and billions of years old kind of stuff away. You know, yeah.
Yeah, look how quick these crystals grew. I mean, it was seconds right before your eyes.
Kyle, one of the trickiest things in science that they do is metals. And people are like, metals are crystals. Yes, metals are crystals. But one of the things that they have, like one of the most expensive processes that they do it is trying to remember like how quickly they turn over and the conditions stand that. In metals, they turn so quickly that, you know how like if you freeze ice, you get an ice cube as opposed to crystallization and being organized, or the example with the like lava coming and cooling so quickly to become organized. Metal organizes so quickly in such small fragments of a millisecond. They try to slow it down. One of the most expensive things to make is something called a metal glass, and it's got some really neat properties to it, meaning that you have your chemicals and metal, but you don't have it in that perfect organized lattice here. So again, like ice cube, you can have it where it's not as organized compared to a snowflake where you see it because you froze it very quickly and forced the conditions over. It didn't happen naturally on its own.
Yeah, some ice is very transparent and other ice is not very transparent.
Right, on the different things. And then again, your snowflake, coming openly, it creates perfect snowflakes and your perfect crystallization on it, right? metal crystallizes so quickly. So when they talk about the Earth forming in days or how long these things take, metal crystallizes so quickly. It's in milliseconds. I forgot exactly how many zeros before the milliseconds, but that's one of the hardest things to do is get metals to change over from liquid to solid without organizing perfectly.
Never really thought about that, about the speed
Without
at
the
which something
perfectly
crystallizes.
Right.
So, like,
Right.
let's do a race. Okay. This is exactly how fast it
Mhm.
takes sugar to crystallize. And this is exactly how fast it takes water to crystallize. Like,
And things
I've
do,
never
they
seen anyone
crystallize
study-
differently, and the metals crystallize fast. Because again,
I've
they
never
do
seen
things in the
anyone
different
study that before.
technology to make the glasses. We force the glasses, and glasses have a lot of uses and easy technology to go with it. But you take the pattern out of it, the organization, but trying to make a metal glass, which again has some really neat characteristics, they run problems with it because, again, how quickly it happens. So things happening over millions of years? No. This stuff happens, a lot of it happens in again, partial seconds, just the tiniest fraction.
Yeah, I just think about I think about my pottery class and how we'd make clay out of just dust. We'd take a whole bunch of powder, just add water, and you add water, and then things start crystallizing. They start sticking together, and yeah, exactly what we were talking about there. And it doesn't take a whole long time to get something to go from dust to the bone dry like solids.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Other kind of evidence for these two ideas. It's a kind of evidence which doesn't come from the process of growth. It comes from the properties of the finished crystal. This is the evidence of cleavage. If you've ever handled mica, you're acquainted with cleavage. The mica crystals you find in nature come apart easily in one direction and not in any other, so that you can split them into extremely thin, tough sheets. The mica acts as if it was made like a book, with a lot of leaves of tough paper. But if you actually try it, you'll get the feeling that there's no limit to the thinness of those leaves of paper. You'll feel that if you were skillful enough, you could split each leaf of the mica in two, and then each of those in two again, and so on. It makes you guess that the atoms in the mica are arranged in great sheets, that the atoms are bonded together very tightly in the sheets, and the bonding forces between the sheets are very small. Just the arrangement of atoms in sheets like that is a kind of orderliness. There aren't many crystals that cleave as well as mica. Alum, for example, doesn't cleave at all, but a great many crystals do cleave amazingly well. Let me show you the cleavage in this crystal. It's a crystal of nickel sulfate hexahydrate. It cleaves parallel to this face. I'll put the thing down on a little plasticine to hold it in place. I'll take a single-edged razor blade and direct the blade parallel to the face and give the back of the blade a smart tap. She comes apart.
Wow.
And now look at that. As flat as you please. You may say, oh, you picked a special place in the crystal. But look, I can cleave it again, parallel to that same face, and get a thin plate out of the thing.
I'm thinking about like masons here and stone cutting, and about how if you just hit the
Exactly.
stone in just the right way, you get a nice clean cut. And yeah.
Exactly. If you know which way it's going, you can cut. I've shown the videos of this on Coffee Talk a bunch of times because people talk about how they cut all these giant stones with like little pieces of metal and a hammer and some elbow grease. Literally, that's
You
it.
just have to know which way to cut it.
You have
Exactly.
to know how it works. You have to understand how it works, and that's what. Yeah.
That
going,
children's
it's
show, DuckTales from Disney, showed me this when I was a child. That when you find that spot and you hit it at the right angle and the right this and that, there was all these big guys in some quarry breaking all these big stones and taking all day to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And this little skinny old guy with the glasses on, he'd go up and be like, tink, and the whole thing would just like fall apart. Yeah, he's like, you just got to know where to hit him. That's it. Yeah, it was rude, but that just came back to me right there.
Yeah, those little things that
Yeah.
just kind of prepare you and show you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Diamonds have, by the way, perfect cleavage. And so for people that say diamonds are the hardest substance and think that they should test it with a hammer, hardness only means how hard it is to scratch. how hard it is to scratch with something, not how hard it is to break that. And I cannot tell you, like some of the biggest diamonds, you had an over 80 carat diamond in South Africa that somebody tested with a sledgehammer. And decided and it was an 80 carat. Yeah. And other things, again, where people like buy into the rings. Well, I didn't think you could break it. Isn't diamond the hardest thing? So, but yes, diamond is the hardest thing, but it does have perfect cleavage, meaning that there are areas that, again, you hit it just right, it will cleave.
Have you heard of those diamond like saws and stuff? Is that just kind of like in name only, or
no? They use like all low grade diamonds are used for industrial uses.
Yeah, fine diamonds is what, Cammy, like 0.00 something % of the amount of diamonds that are on Earth.
Right. Like, most of it is more industrial.
Most diamonds are not expensive. Right. Only the ones that are perfect.
They're not without a crystal clear. They don't have a clarity. They're not pretty. They're just, they look like pretty, rocks.
They look like gray, just rocks, but they can grind them and they do put them on the side.
But they have that hardness.
And now they can grow it too. Yeah, the hardness.
Yeah, oh yeah. Here we go.
Place in the crystal. It's a special direction in the crystal. Now, maybe you will say, oh, that isn't any special direction. You've got a sharp razor blade and you're cutting the thing apart with it. All right, if that's what you think, let me try the same stunt in a different direction. I turn my razor blade in a different direction and I whack it, and nothing much happens until I whack it a lot harder. And finally, of course, the thing busts. And there's no nice flat face. It's just broken apart like anything else.
DuckTales.
Oh, the way I like plasticine. That's such a nice word for Play-Doh.
Now let me show you the cleavage in another crystal, a crystal of sodium nitrate. Here's a crystal that cleaves in 3 directions, not just one. I can cleave it here, like this. And I can cleave it here, like this. And here, like this.
And he's just using the dough to keep it still?
Yeah, from sliding on the table.
Okay.
So that one pretty much grows in a perfect cube then? Sodium nitrate?
Yeah, sodium, that's salt. Salt's a cube.
Yeah. Wow.
Cubic cap, yep.
Nickel sulfate and sodium nitrate by recipes given in the film notes in case you want to play around with the stuff yourself. Sodium nitrate has a lot of interesting properties. It has most of the properties of the mineral calcite. When big crystals of calcite were first discovered about 300 years ago in a quarry in Iceland, the scientists of that day got hold of some, and their studies of the stuff made the first big start in our understanding of crystals. As I say, sodium nitrate and calcite have many properties in common. In particular, they both cleave the same way. When those earlier scientists saw the way calcite cleaves, they had the idea that maybe calcite was made of tiny building blocks, all alike and all having the shape of little cleavage blocks of calcite. You may be inclined to laugh at this and say that calcite, like all matter, must be made of atoms, and atoms don't look like building blocks. Okay, you're telling me. What do the atoms look like? Little hard round iron pellets? Don't let me fool you with those pennies and bearing balls I've been showing you. They just show where the atoms are, not what the atoms look like. For all I know, the atoms look like 4-leaf clovers.
I like that part right there because a lot of people like to say, oh, atoms aren't real. Nobody's seen an atom. Now you're talking about atoms. And I love when he says that because it's like, he's like, well, don't let me fool you. It's not like I can see this stuff. But, you know, but it does explain the fractality of crystals because they're the same, very, very small and very, very big. It will have the same shape and the same geometry.
It's like electricity. You know?
I'm wondering how you can put them back together. Can you do that if you've like cut them?
Well, apart? You would have to put it depends on the material, and you would have to put it back in its correct growing conditions. But
so
yeah,
but like a slurry, and because you can kind of do that with clay, but yeah.
even quartz crystals will self-heal. You know that they will continue to grow out of the ground.
So maybe put 2 crystals right next to each other and just continually like throw water on it to help kind of.
No, you're going to need better than that. Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend on the crystal and what you're talking about. And that I know that I know from technology that they did find a way. God, I remember. I'm trying to think back. Was it in the late 80s, early 90s, where they were merging like all of a sudden? And again, this is how we come up with it in the jewelry world. Is all of a sudden these big emeralds, a whole bunch of them were turning up, and it was turning up that they were finding a way to like almost meld together or do that in technology, but it's not as simple as you want. I mean, these people, the labs that they work with on trying to reproduce and trying to come up with the pretty gemstones and again, grow them, blah, blah, but they are advanced. They are super
Yeah, they're
advanced.
spending lots and lots of money on tech.
I
I
don't
guess
think
that's what welding is, right? Welding is kind of putting them back together.
And this is again, it's a trade industry. It's not these people aren't going to university. They're going to, it's a whole trade, gemology. So, but we'll keep going on that.
So there's a lot of trade, like insider trader secrets kind of a thing too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and these places that grow gems, that's like proprietary information. They patent it. They don't tell anybody what they're doing. They keep it secret. Like it's a big hush hush.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure. Well, they have made making gold illegal in parts of Europe. I think it was 1400s. They called it alchemical gold. And it was a little bit different than regular gold, but it was allowed to be traded because it was gold, but it was just
people actually learned how to do it. They don't make it illegal unless someone's actually doing it.
Then they made the trade of it illegal and practicing alchemy illegal. Period. Like you weren't allowed to practice alchemy. If they found an alchemy lab, you were in trouble. Yeah. So they didn't.
And they
knew a lot back then. And then
they know a lot back then. They know things. I mean, now it used to be, I mean, gold they are growing in laboratories, and it's just not feasibly financially. It costs more to grow it than it does to mine it. But that was the same with diamonds a while back too, and now they are flying out the lab created diamonds. Again, it's just technology will go forward, but let's keep going.
Okay.
But it's not something that you share with people. Then you share that they're shiny decorative items to put on your rings and baubles to mystic. They're not going through the science of them.
Okay, here we go.
This produced both of the main ideas which go into the picture of a crystal that we have today. First, they were saying crystals have an ultimate fine structure, the building blocks. We would call them small groups of atoms instead of blocks, but the difference is really more a matter of words than of anything else. Second, they were saying that structure has a regular array. The blocks are stacked up in a regular order, and they keep stacking up in regular arrangement as the crystal grows. It turns out that you can think of any crystal, not only crystals which show cleavage, but any crystal, as made of little blocks, stacked up in regular array, without overlapping, on top of one another and side by side, if you choose the right shape of block. In the case of alum, the right shape of block is a cube. And you can think of the alum crystal as made of little cubes, all stacked up on top of one another without overlapping this way. Notice that I've made the main faces on the model of the alum crystal by stepping back the cubes as I pile them up. At first, you might think that would mean that the face would be pretty rough. But you've got to remember that these little cubes are really only a few atoms wide. Their sides are only about 1/10 millionth of a centimeter long, and you wouldn't feel that roughness or even see it under the microscope. One of the things that gave early support to the building block idea was the fact that all crystals of the same stuff have the same angles between corresponding faces. The crystals might be very different in size. They might have grown at different rates on different faces so that they have different overall shapes, like these two alum crystals. Nevertheless, the angles between corresponding faces of all crystals are the same, so long as the crystals are made of the same material. It all suggests very strongly that each material forms its own building block, which gets repeated again and again as the crystal grows.
That also has to do with there's frequency that affects the way it grows too. Like I've heard that with ice. Ice is a crystal, and like when you talk to the ice and then freeze it, it freezes in different shapes. And so I kind of wonder about that with alum, for example. If you were to like vibrate the crystal while it's forming, is it going to form a different shape? How is that going to look? So
Could be a
Interesting.
different shape, but it's still going to have the same faces, and it's going to, again, the outer shape might look different, but the inside organization, your lattice structure is going to remain the same.
Yeah, think of
Water is a
it.
little bit different too, as far
Water
as
is
like
special. I
water
agree.
is a liquid crystal. There's only two substances that are still considered that are considered like nature's liquid crystals, and that's mercury and water.
Mercury and water. Mhm.
liquid crystals. Okay. Yeah, I'm just thinking about the whole water has memory thing. And like, I wonder how that affects like other things when it comes to like the freezing quality of it. You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah.
It's
depends
a
on the
whole
material.
thing to go through. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's a
Who
whole
is
big
that?
mystery thing. That's
Dr. Emoto
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
and his crystalline, his crystal waters. He's the one who did with all the different phrases and everything and different types of music. And he
Hmm.
would
Yeah.
freeze it and take pictures of it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Have you
amazing
seen the
stuff.
stuff that Vita Austin does too? It's a little different. It's different than Dr. Emoto, but it's cool too. Where she'll take like the petri dish and put it on a picture and then flash freeze it, and then the ice will have like the picture of whatever it was on and it's like
Wow,
it's pretty trippy. It's
that's
pretty
pretty
trippy.
neat. Yeah, I want to see that. Okay, cool. All right, here we go.
Building blocks, as Alan can. Their building blocks don't have the same length in the different directions. For example, here is the arrangement of atoms in the cubic building block for iron. It's fairly simple. Now look at this model of the building block for garnet. It represents an elaborate grouping of 160 atoms. But this study isn't easy. Don't get the idea you can turn on the X-rays and out drops the answer. It's a very specialized kind of study. But once we know what arrangements atoms take in crystals, we can begin to ask why they take those arrangements. We're really only just beginning to get that kind of knowledge. Now, turn back for a moment to the microscope and remind yourself of what is happening while a crystal grows. Atoms are constantly arriving at the surfaces and adding themselves onto those surfaces in an orderly way. And they're doing this at an amazing rate of speed. The crystals you're looking at are growing fairly fast. Suppose a crystal grew at the rate of only a couple of millimeters a day, which is fairly slow. You can calculate that about 1,000 layers of molecules would have to be laid down per second on the surface of that crystal. And all the molecules have to be laid down in the right sort of order. I want to borrow a trick from Sir Lawrence Bragg to give you just a rough idea of some of the things that we think must go on as a crystal grows. Sir Lawrence blows soap bubbles. He blows them in a pan of soapy water, tiny bubbles which rise to the surface and collect in rafts. The bubbles behave a little like atoms because when they're floating on the water, they attract one another a little. And when they touch, they stick to one another quite strongly, as atoms do. But again, like the atoms, they have a squashy sort of size so that they take up space. Watch how the bubbles collect together into an orderly arrangement. It's the same as the arrangement of pennies I showed you, the so-called close-packed arrangement. Notice that the rafts are made of large parts. All of the parts have the same sort of order, but the orderliness of the parts is turned in different directions so that there are grain boundaries between the parts. This is like a solid made of lots of crystals which started growing in different places and finally joined.
Looks like
the sail
scales
after
or
it's all
something.
solidified, or that brass door handle.
You can't look at that without thinking of some kind of like organic material, like something alive.
Well, if you look at snake scales, they're actually and that's a hexagonal form too. It's just elongated. So the shape is everywhere.
Yeah. It very much looks like snake skin right there.
Oh yeah, and even plants. I mean, plants have salts in them that build up the pretty much the matrix of the plant, the outside shell almost. And there's the alcohol and the oils or all the liquids inside of it, but the outside is pretty much made up of crystals. And even when you look down in at the center of a flower, those little pollens will be crystalline. They'll be hexagonal shaped or there's different types.
I'm kind of thinking of like a honeycomb now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what the center of a flower looks like. When you get down and look at the actual pollen of a flower, let me see if I can pull up a picture real quick. I'll start this. But yeah.
pollen itself looks honeycomb shaped, which is really interesting because
Yeah, I've taken a
bees
picture
go
of
out
it.
there and
Yeah.
they collect nectar and they're picking up all this pollen, and then all of a sudden, like their beehives end up looking like the pollen that they collect. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, I'll find a picture of it for you here.
Faster than this, the more astounding their achievement seems to be. But this will give you some little idea of what a hustle and bustle must really have to go on an atomic scale.
I'm just thinking about the cell structure and about how like the intelligence of engineering the crystals around us to end up building structures out of that kind of stuff, and how our cells just do that naturally. Like we don't think about that conscientiously, but our bodies just do it. And I'm like, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild.
Wish building our houses could be that easy, right?
Then they congeal into a glass. A glass is very much like a liquid, but it's like a liquid in which the molecules are no longer able to move past each other. It has patches of order in the midst of disorder. The disorder is frozen in place, so to speak, and can't get itself rearranged into order. Liquids and glasses are pretty disorderly arrangements of molecules, and gases are the most disorderly arrangements of all. The only order in gases is the arrangement of atoms grouped in each molecule of the gas. Later in this course, you'll learn more about gases. But already, you can see why gases are so very much alike in a great many ways, whereas there are so many different kinds of solids. The only way gases can differ is in the kinds of molecules they are made of. But solids can differ also in the kind of orderliness which those molecules take up in the crystals which comprise the solid. I can show you this selectiveness actually happening in some of the materials you've already looked at. I'll melt some salal on the hot plate over here. There. And bring it over to the microscope and let it cool down so that it wants to crystallize. Then I'll seed the salal with a tiny crystal of alum. Nothing happens. No salal will crystallize on it. Now I'll seed the melt with a few little crystals of salal. And you can see the salal crystals grow, leaving the alum crystal unaffected. The orderliness of alum is not the right kind of orderliness for salal, and the salal simply waits until the right kind of orderliness is presented to it. And I think now you can see what I promised you would see about granite. Why it is that the three different ingredients, quartz, feldspar, and mica, form three separate kinds of crystals in the granite and don't form just a single crystal in which the molecules of quartz, feldspar, and mica all take part together. It's because those three kinds of molecules normally form crystals with three different kinds of order. When the three kinds of molecules are all together, they can't find a kind of order which is common to all three of them. So they crystallize out separately, each in its preferred way. You know, after 20 years of growing crystals, I still find the whole business nearly miraculous. You go to the microscope to watch it, and it happens again. And you know that the atoms are at work, busily, almost unerringly, constructing something. Something regular, something orderly, constructing something which, from an atom's point of view, is simply enormous.
So
Awesome.
that was awesome. That was just almost like the prequel. It's really the next video in the line. That was just a prequel because, again, the question to the next one is just going to take you back 20 more years. One of us has got an open mic where I'm hearing a lot of breathing on. I'm not sure.
Or it's like a rubbing. Zach, are you on your headset mic or are you on your
I think he's on his
laptop
headset mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, but we keep on hearing like a breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take care of that. Yeah, that's what we're doing now. Okay.
Did you hear it?
Are you guys ready to start the
Yeah, I want to start the next one was that this was our prequel, people, but that was 1958. Let's go, I think, back to 1938 and see where we even knew more. I like this time traveling.
I love the opening screen to this one.
Also, as we watch this one, I want people to take notice of, again, how they teach us women were treated back in the day.
Minerals is rock crystal or quartz. Quartz is brilliant and clear in its pure form, but it takes on colors and tints when it contains traces of impurities. Quartz grows in many forms, and
I'm going to check the settings real quick and make sure we're okay. 480 is the highest. All right.
makes up a very large part of the crust of the earth. It is also known under other names such as amethyst, agate, and rose quartz. Once used principally for decoration, it is today more than a thing of beauty. When cut into tiny pieces, it controls the frequency of radio transmission and reception. Crystal wafers, precisely cut from the natural mineral, set the radio channels for the armed forces, much as push buttons select the stations on home sets. They do it more simply and with greater accuracy. In war, they provide quick and certain means of communication between fighting units. While experimenting with piezoelectric crystals during World War I and seeking a method of locating submarines, Professor Cady recognized in quartz the key to the hair-splitting accuracy which crystal controls provide for radio today. Piezoelectricity, a property of quartz and of certain other crystals, was discovered by the Curie brothers of France more than a half a century ago. The problem of getting radio plates out of the rock can be understood by considering this wooden model. We desire a little square plate cut at just the right angles of tilt and of turn with reference to the natural boundaries of the perfect crystal. The crystallographer speaks of axes which are perpendicular and parallel to some of these faces. We have to saw through the quartz at angles which are exactly right to have the finished plate behave properly in the radio set. The plate whose boundaries are traced in pencil on this wooden model is known as a GT cut plate because of its particular orientation in the mother rock. Holding angles of cut to extremely close tolerances is one of the cardinal principles of good crystal plate manufacture. Precise orientation seems simple when the quartz has its natural faces. Fortunately, even in rough faceless quartz, the layer structure of the atoms is still there as a guide. This structure can be picked up with X-rays. In the receiving room of the factory, the cases of rough quartz are opened and a preliminary sorting and inspection of each piece takes place. Practically all quartz used in the manufacture of radio crystals comes from Brazil. Its value to the nation is so great that each bears a label of its importance. The quartz is roughly sorted according to size, shape, presence or absence of natural faces, and quality. We do not find many ideally shaped quartz crystals in the shipments. Crystals that show more than a few of their original faces are uncommon. With most pieces, these faces have been broken off in mining. Others have been rounded and smoothed by rolling on the bottoms of streams. A few are fairly symmetrical, with faces clearly formed. Sometimes quartz has a reddish appearance on the surface, and occasionally it is a smoky color throughout. But color is of little importance in making radio plates. After preliminary sorting, there is a thorough inspection for cracks, optical twinning, inclusions, and other internal imperfections. This is done in an immersion tank filled with a special type of mineral oil. The inspector submerges each quartz crystal and rotates it in a strong beam of light. Under oil, the surfaces of the quartz vanish, letting the interior imperfections come to light for the inspector to observe. From the character of these imperfections, he judges the usefulness of each piece. After the quartz has been examined under oil in polarized light, it is marked according to its quality. The grades and sizes after being classified are placed in storage trays, and these, quickly identified by color or other means, are stacked ready for manufacturing.
From the storage trays, the racks are carried to the orienting and sawing departments, where the manufacturing process begins. Pieces for the day's production are selected, and the method of cutting, which will produce the greatest number of crystal oscillators, is decided upon. The quartz is again submerged in oil so that the optic axis may be located and marked. The optic axis is found by locating certain bands of color which are formed when the quartz is examined in polarized light. Also, in polarized light, certain types of imperfections in quartz are revealed by other patterns in color. A striking example of this latter is seen in this flat plate. The triangular patterns, which keep their forms though the colors change with the change of the lighting, indicate twinning of the quartz. Twinning is an imperfection which must be discovered and twinned regions avoided in the finished plates.
Twinning is, of course, when their crystals grew into each other, when you saw them grow and hit each other's boundaries. And you'll see why that would be so important here when they're getting angles of it, because you'd have different optic orientations of it. So when you remember the crystals growing together and hitting a boundary and stopping, twinning is where they connect, but they have different, they're going to change orientation. And that's what you're looking for, and fabulous demo of it.
So is that how granite would be formed? It's just crystals all hitting into each other and stopping there?
No, because granite are different crystals that don't grow together. These are actual of the same crystal that, like, you have two like larger crystals, or that let's say they're growing in different directions. They run into each other and they're growing in different directions, and that's where they connect. And so they're going to just change direction there. So it's all one material. And again, you need the polarized lighting, or again, twinning is sometimes you can pick it up with your eye. But I mean, I've used polarized. I'm so used to using, a polariscope to do that. But yeah, twinning, it's something also you want to always take in consideration when cutting, when heating on and working. Again, you look at twinning, making sure that, again, it's an area of, again, when you're cutting it, it's going to change direction and feel very weird there. But we'll keep going.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to find the picture of that flower, because I took the picture where I can see the little honeycomb pollens, and I can't find one online. And I'm up to like 900, and I'm still in sun and moon pictures.
Wondering
We might
exactly
have,
how
we might have to do that next week. Go
microscopic
into
vision
a thing.
these have.
Yeah, 60 bioptical zoom helps with the macro setting. Yeah, that's how I got it. Okay, here we go.
Where the optic axis lies, and is marking a guideline on the surface. For ease in guiding the sawing operations to come, he paints a series of dots along the axis to make the direction stand out. The rough quartz is next cut by the saw into small pieces. The saw is a rotating disc of copper or steel, charged with diamond powder along the rim.
I was just asking about that. Yeah, this is getting right to it.
As the revolving blade starts into the stone, a thin stream of cooling liquid is directed across it. Special saws are among the many developments which have been made during the war to facilitate the manufacture of quartz plates in large quantities. The quartz is harder than steel, but the diamond-edged blades quickly go through the large pieces. For successful cutting without undue waste of material, the saw blades must be as thin as possible and quite free from vibration. A stone of this size is cut into several slabs, and for convenience in handling, each of these slabs will in turn be sliced into smaller pieces. Precisely and quickly, the blade of the saw cuts through the quartz. Note here how its shadow appears to mark the way. Sawing so far seen has been of the rougher sort along the approximate axis of the mother quartz. The final slicing of this bar into wafers is an operation of more precision. And in order to keep record of the orientation of the bar in relation to the original mother quartz, a reference direction is marked on the surface. As a first step, we need to identify the electrically negative and positive faces of the quartz bar. This is done by squeezing it gently under a lever arm and measuring the electrical charge on a vacuum tube voltmeter. The second step in lining up the quartz for cutting is made in a conoscope. Direction marks are again made on the bar, and it is placed in an electric oven to be heated in preparation for mounting. The warmed quartz is taken from the oven, coated with shellac and hot cementing compound, and its piezoelectrically negative side mounted down against the faceplate of the jig. For accurate determination of the angle for cutting the wafers, it is necessary to provide for both easy adjustment and firm clamping of the quartz. It is mounted on a jig, such as the one shown, where the quartz may be oriented in any direction. It is to be finally locked in just the right position for the saw cut. The quartz, firmly bolted on the adjustable jig, is again submerged in the oil of the conoscope. The quartz is to be aligned in relation to the internal structure of the quartz rather than to the surfaces of the rough bar. With this flat bar, the optic axis shows itself as the center of a very perfect set of colored rings which appears in the eyepiece. These rings shift as the bar is turned ever so slightly. The task is to center the rings on the crosshairs of the eyepiece. When this is done, it determines the optic axis with good precision. For final and still greater accuracy, adjustments are made by means of X-rays in the darkroom.
They just don't make them like they used to.
The X-ray machine is so set up that when the quartz is tilted to its exact position for sawing the BT cut crystals, a characteristic pattern of spots is reflected from the atoms of the crystal, making a sort of picture of the positions of the atoms. These spots are not visible to the camera, but appear on the screen before the operator. When satisfied that the position is correct, the operator locks the jig in proper adjustment and places it on the shelf ready for the wafering saw. In looking back, we have seen the mother crystal sawed into slabs, and one of these in turn into several bars. Wafers are next to be precisely cut from one of these bars on the basis of the electric, optic, and X-ray tests which we have just seen. On the bottom of the steel jig upon which the crystal is mounted is a groove that fits accurately into a runner on the saw table, ensuring that the quartz cut will be in accordance with the X-ray measurements. Vertical arrows have been drawn on the quartz in 2 previous operations so that the crystal would not get inverted. After the jig is firmly...
I think it's fascinating that if you watch this movie and taking it back, and I like watching again even game shows and that back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, and this, you'll notice that the women are all doing all of the precision. The men did the rougher, the heavy stuff, but when you start getting to the precision type of work, you're going to notice it's all taken over by women. And so I just find it fascinating, something I noticed in here. See if anybody else notices. And again, it's not just this alone. It's in general going into the old movies and that.
It's amazing to me that the amount of effort they're going in to be so precise and perfect with these crystals. You know, this was way back when we didn't have computer anything really. And yeah, the X-rays and this and that, and putting them through all these different processes so you cut them just perfect so they work just right when you go to put them in there. Yeah, it's amazing.
Bolted to the saw head, a preliminary cut is made to remove the end of the bar. And again, an identifying arrow is drawn to keep track of the up direction of the first wafer to be cut. The rough wafers are rarely more than 1/16 of an inch thick, and it is quite an art to saw them thin and true from this hard and brittle material. The final finishing of the crystal plates to thickness will be done in grinding and lapping machines, and the time for this operation will be greatly shortened and much material will be saved if the wafers are initially cut thin and accurately by the saw. Quartz crystal manufacturing makes important use of X-ray machines as part of mass production. X-rays permit measurements of angle in the crystal to be made much more accurately than is possible by other instruments. This X-ray machine is equipped with an electric meter to pick up the reflections from the atoms. Although the orientation of the bar before cutting was made with great care, The tolerances of the radio plate are so small that it is desirable to check the angle again after the first wafer is sawed, to make certain that if there is a slight error, it will not be repeated in other wafers sawed from the same bar. After the first wafering cut has proved to be accurate, the entire quartz bar will be cut up into wafers.
And yes, of course, they're using
In
a
order
wet
to
saw
find
because you
any
can't be
defects or
breathing in silica dust. You will die
Yeah.
a slow, maybe
Horrible.
not so slow death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Nope.
any rock. They'll
Yeah.
just start cutting
Yeah.
the
Don't be
rocks
breathing in that
and
stuff.
breathing in the rock dust.
Yeah. Read a book or two on this stuff before you go trying it. Yeah.
Twinning,
Just
which may have
saying.
escaped previous tests, the wafers are now etched in a safety etch bath. Motor-driven arms agitate the solution during etching. After an hour or so in the etching bath, they are washed and then cleaned with alcohol. The etched wafer has a white surface. The difference between an etched and an unetched wafer is readily seen. In looking for twinning on etched surfaces, the inspector sits before a small turntable and rotates the wafers under a concentrated spotlight. Differences in sheen of the surface bring to light any twinned regions. Here are several examples of twinning as seen on etched wafers. The twinned portion is marked out with a pencil. When the wafer is being cut into quartz plates of the required size, the twinned portions will be avoided.
Why would they be able to use those portions? Remember, they're doing it at a very specific angle, and those twin portions are not going to hold the frequency of that angle. It's fascinating what they're doing.
It has to be just the right way so they can extract the piezoelectricity out of it. You're muted, Kyle.
Oh, I was just saying the amount of I kind of call it waste, like the amount of precision going into here, and just how it's starting off with something really big and then it's just getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Wait till you see what they do with them and what they're capable of. So yeah.
Yeah, this is before we had the robotic arms doing all our work for us. This is all the stuff we had to go through, and yeah.
Yeah, just the amount of time that goes into this.
But they work, you know. That's the thing about it. They're like perfect.
The wafers are again examined, this time in the polariscope, in order that when square plates are cut, their edges may be lined up with the electric axis of the quartz. A line indicating this direction is drawn upon them. In marking out the wafers, they are squared up with this line.
It's like building a really fancy car.
As many plates as possible from the wafer.
Really maximizing their material, making little small wafers of the little small part.
The two sides of the squares, which have been outlined in pencil, are now cut one at a time by rotary dicing saws. The wafer rests flat on the table as it moves under the whirling saw. The table moves toward the blade, and the wafer is neatly and quickly cut through. Wafers marked for several blanks are here held in the hand for the separation cut. For speed in cutting and to reduce breakage, The partly cut wafers are next stacked and held together with paraffin. The uneven sides of the bundle are cut in the mechanical dicing saws.
They're cutting them in half after doing all that work.
No, they're cutting them in squares, but that's the waste. So they've lined up the square part in there, and they have them all stacked.
Yeah, so it'll be some are just wider than others, and so they're
Oh.
just taking off the.
So they're all being cut to the same size square there.
So they're just cutting off, like, everyone has been measured exactly where, okay, just doing one cut instead of individually
if you're
doing like 10 cuts.
exactly, they made the bottom cut so they all had the existing correct angle on the bottom edge, and then they're going to do the remaining 3 by machine, because once you've got the one set and drop it in the paraffin, then you have your angle set and the machine can take over. And again, now machines have taken all of it over, but again, we're not even getting to the fun part of what it does. But yeah, it's interesting.
After one side has been cut, the bundle is turned and the operation is repeated. After the bundle has been cut, the paraffin is melted and removed from the square blanks. They are sorted according to thickness and are ready for the first stage of grinding and lapping. In the first lapping machines, coarse blanks are ground down to a thickness of approximately 17 thousandths of an inch. The lapping machines are flat cast iron discs grooved on the surface. On the bottom disc is placed a thin zinc holder with pentagonal openings. When this holder is secured in position, the rough blanks are inserted in the openings. The top grinding disc, which is also grooved, is now placed carefully on the blanks. In the high-speed lapping machines, the bottom plates of which revolve swiftly, the blanks are lapped in approximately 1/10 of the time formerly required. Lapping is done with a comparatively coarse silicon carbide abrasive. When the desired time of grinding is completed, the machines automatically stop and the blanks are removed. They are cleaned and prepared for grinding of the edges. In grinding edges to uniform size, the blanks are again stacked in bundles and cemented together with paraffin. The 4 edges of the stack are ground until they are smooth and even and have the desired dimensions. The blanks are uncemented by soaking in boiling water. Then they are cleaned and ready for classification. A dial-type micrometer speeds up this classification. They are measured and grouped by thousandths of an inch. A given number of blanks of the same thickness are taken for the final delicate machine grinding. From the classification room, the sorted blanks are sent to the dust-proof precision lapping room, where they will be mechanically ground fairly close to the desired frequency. The first operation in precision lapping is the thorough washing of the machine and the holders to remove all old abrasive. The eccentric motion of the holders ensures uniform grinding of all blanks. After washing, the holders are turned before another lapping begins. The selected blanks of the same thickness are distributed in the holders. Spoonfuls of fine abrasive are next poured onto the blanks. After spreading the abrasive carefully over the blanks, the operator gently feels to be sure that all of the blanks are in place. The top lap, which is grooved like the bottom one, is now placed on the machine.
I keep thinking every step here is done for a reason, and so it seems super, super meticulous to like do all this. And so I'm like, who just discovered all this? Whose invention was all this? Who created this whole entire process? You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
Tesla must have knew about this stuff because he was making radios and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
This
I
is
don't know
this
if
is
he
about
was.
transmitting,
This is
Yeah,
oh,
the
yeah,
frequencies.
and controlling them by there, and again with the military coming up, but with the different thicknesses, again where people can't read them. So again, we're jumping ahead on what this is used for, but there's a reason they are being so precise on it, Kyle, and they will get there.
Yeah, this guy, I believe, worked on sonar for the military. The guy who, let me see if this is the right. No, I think that was the last guy. Yeah, I think that was the last guy. I was reading the.
And that the machine is to operate.
Yeah, it's just that whole thing of what gave him this idea. You know what I mean? Like, all I could see is the end product, and then it's like, okay, you know, I can think about it in a backwards engineering kind of a way where I'm trying to think of like, okay, this is my objective, and this is everything I'm going to do to get to that objective. But who told him what to do to get to that objective? You know what I mean? It's just like.
Well, it's
Yeah.
probably like anything else. They're trying to make them, you know, as small as they can, to make the whole machine as small as they can make it.
Yeah.
So the original design probably wasn't, you know, this intricate, the person who came up with it. And then over time they realized, hey, we can make these things even smaller and thinner and, you know.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
they
kind of
say
thinking
that-
about that with computers. Is computers, giant computers, getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
It's different on this, though. The thinness is going to control the frequencies. So again, with the thicker, I think they had it figured out quite a while ago with frequencies. Again, who thought of doing the cutting it at exactly this angle will control what frequency it's coming through. I know he said that in the other one they talked about 300 years ago with the Icelandic calcite, and then finding it that was like the first time they really looked at it. But that's not really true either. With Al-Biruni, they were looking at hardness, streaks, and different properties, even going back. Again, this is knowledge that's been there a long time, that they're showing how to refine and make it under mass production for war. But this was well-known knowledge back then.
It also talks about crystals in scripture. If you read it,
and that again, holding, that's when you're talking about the firmament, that it's going to control what can get through, what can't get through, what it transmits at. Again, the intelligence of it, and again, right now they're piecing it together now to have, you know, doing certain thinnesses to mask their stations with their broadcasting over. But the technology was there before this. This is fine tuning and mass producing it. And again, this is, I think, 1938. 1940, I don't know, I'd have to look at the work on it, but as we go, the further back we go on crystals, the more we seem to know. And doesn't that seem a little bit again, we've now evolved to them being baubles on our hands and nothing but hippies and love flowers and everything else. But again, we'll get to where they're getting
to the science of it.
Okay.
I do love a shiny rock, though.
When the time of lapping has ended, the operator deftly lifts off the top lapping plate and removes one sample blank from each of the 5 holders. These are cleaned and tested between metal electrodes in an oscillating circuit. Upon adjustment of the dial, the meter tells the activity of the blank, and at the same time, an audible tone indicates the frequency by comparison with the standard. If the blanks tested are close to the desired frequency, all of the remaining blanks are removed from the machine and sent to a second classification department, where they will be tested individually. In this second classification department, each blank is tested electrically and sorted according to frequency in preparation for the final finishing to specification. The thickness of the crystal plates determines the frequency. The thinner the plate, the higher the frequency. In the final finishing department, the crystals are etched, first in mass and then individually by hand, to bring them up to the various specified frequencies. Preparatory to the mass etching operation, the crystals are then stacked in notched Pyrex glass racks and are given a final cleansing in a concentrated chromic acid solution. The crystals are first thoroughly cleaned to remove abrasive and oil left by the machine lapping process. The racked crystals are transferred into successive shallow tanks in which the acid is watched off. The crystals are now etched in a solvent for quartz known as frequency etch for a sufficient time to bring their frequency close but not quite to the final frequency desired.
Zach, your mic is open again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The crystals are then removed from the etching solution and are thoroughly washed, first in a neutralizing solution and then in pure water.
They're setting the crystals to a specific frequencies. That's kind of what it sounded like they're doing.
Yeah, well, they're grinding them down until they have the frequency that they want. That's within the tolerances that they need for the what they're
At this
making.
point, the crystals are taken out of the racks and after their frequencies have been checked, are issued to the hand finishing operators who make the final individual adjustment of frequencies. The operators are seated at
I'm thinking like a xylophone now. It's
One of
just
the
you,
most
you
delicate
kind
of
of
all operations
whack it and
for
see
the
what kind
manufacture
of
of
tone it
process.
makes. Is that kind of what they're talking about?
Well, kind of. They put it on a little thing that reads the frequency that it's emitting, right? And so then if it's in the within the tolerances.
Oh, so they're just not whacking it at all. It's just naturally vibrating at that, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, yes. Quartz is
They
it
were-
all. Go ahead,
They were
Kimmy.
measuring it between like the middle. They put it on a metal plate and then they put an oscillator on top of it. So they were measuring it between. They were taking a reading between plates or
Mhm.
between items. I probably used the wrong verbiage on it. I think Karen, you had that right. But again, if you notice that they set it down, set something, and tested each one for frequency.
Like I'm just thinking about like the kind of education that would go to learn this kind of stuff, and I'm like that has not been my educational experience at all in college. It's
Right,
all
they didn't
just
tell you anything about that, did they?
yeah, they just go through all the books, and there's not like there were labs, but they're very very light labs, nothing like super intense like this.
Right.
Yeah, it's more or less daycare for adults anymore, I think.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
The sad state of education is just yeah, it's something to behold.
Final adjustment of frequency of the crystals is done with such great precision that the operators have been aptly named the millionth of an inch girls. Each finishing position is equipped with a small sink hot running water, compressed air, small dishes containing etching and neutralizing solutions, plastic tongs to hold the crystals, a revolving drum-like edging device, and a comparison oscillator.
I'm seeing what you're talking about with the women there. The millionth of an inch girls.
I
A
love this
thoroughly
chick's
clean
hair.
surface is necessary if the etching is to take place uniformly.
Yeah, your fingernail polish does not last doing this type of stuff with it. She's dressed up for the video.
Thoroughly
I'm
dried
going to be on TV.
Yep.
and placed between electrodes. The crystal is then measured in the oscillator to determine the amount of frequency that must be etched off to reach the precise desired value. The activity of the crystal is also checked. In the instance seen, the crystal activity is found to be low. To increase the activity, the operator lightly laps the edges of the crystal by holding it within the abrasive-lined rotating drum. The crystal is now gripped in the plastic tongs and is placed in the etching solution for the required time. While the crystal is etching, the operator cleans and dries the electrodes. The etching solution dissolves quartz from the surface of the crystal, making it thinner and thereby increasing the frequency. Also, by removing the damaged surface layer produced by machine lapping, etching increases the stability of the finished oscillator plate. The crystal is removed from the etching solution, washed, neutralized, again washed, and its frequency measured to find how close it is to the desired value. The frequency is still found to be low, so that the crystal is again scrubbed, etched, washed, dried, and remeasured. The frequency is now found to be within the tolerances, and the crystal is put into its permanent holder. The frequency and activity are again checked. At this stage, the crystals are all put through a drop test and a vibration test. To ensure that they will maintain their performance under the production tests, the crystals are first dropped through a zigzag funnel-like contrivance. The wooden cover of the box has been removed to permit this photograph of the operation.
This is like the weirdest part of the experiment of all. This is like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory right now.
Do not shift its position or frequency. The crystals are now mounted on a broad horizontal rack where they are mechanically vibrated for half an hour. The intensity of the vibration is seen by the behavior of a glass of water, which has here been placed on the vibrating table. The crystals are now taken to a calibration room where an exact measurement of frequency is made by direct comparison with the standard frequency, using a cathode ray oscilloscope. The rotation of an ellipse in the oscilloscope will indicate the frequency down to 1/1000th of 1%. The accuracy is far beyond that required when the ellipse turns as slowly as shown here. The crystals that pass the oscilloscope test have the covers of their holders tightly screwed down. Frequency identification plates are then attached. When the crystals are calibrated, it is found that a small proportion have, for one reason or another, slightly higher frequencies than are desired. These crystals formerly were sent to salvage and were relapped and finished to the next higher frequency channel. Very recently, a revolutionary new technique has been developed in the Reeves Research Laboratory, by which it is possible to reduce the frequency of a crystal whose frequency has been carried too high. In practice, the amount of decrease in frequency needed to bring the overshot crystal back within tolerance is measured.
This part still
Crystal
trips
is
me
then
out.
removed from its holder,
Zap it with an X-ray.
which centers it in a powerful beam of X-rays. When the slide is pushed in, a switch automatically turns on the X-ray beam, and similarly, when the slide is removed, the X-rays are turned off. The X-ray
You're
Can't hear
muted,
you there,
Zach.
Zach.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, with no shielding really whatsoever. Just now we flip on the X-ray and
Well, because when they put it in that little box, I think the box has the X-ray inside of it, and it zaps the crystal.
Kind of like a microwave or something.
Kinda, yeah.
I think this is kind of that whole setting it to the memory that I was just talking about. They're talking to the crystal basically with all the X-rays, and then it's having like a memory effect.
And when you're getting back to talking about like the firmament being glass or glass versus crystalline and doing that, here's where we're going to say is that if you understand crystals and again how they work, you can see that they can let through frequencies, they can stop things, they can control what's, how much UV gets in, different things. And so when you talk about how, like, even if you were going to do biblical, that we could not stand the voice of God or live through it, or the different things, outer space, the radiation, the different things like that, you would almost need some type of a good shield. And so crystalline would make much more intelligent sense than a glass. In other words, if you're putting any type of Occam's razor or critical thought and think that nature grows in crystals and crystals have properties that can control, like, and we're showing you one thing on controlling radio frequencies and how to send through.
Mm-hmm.
And again, even when they do the woo-woo science, let's not say, I mean, people say that they focus energy. Yes, crystals can focus energy. They have so many properties and things that they can do, but it's put out as a pseudoscience instead of a science. And I mean, it really is put out as complete pseudoscience when nothing is further from the truth. Right now, on the transmitters, that these things the quartz is all being grown in laboratory and it's all completely automated and nobody has a clue what's going on. Just like with the micrometers and different equipment they're using. I know that in the gemology world that I was in, I feel blessed because I was one of the last people that got to use analog equipment, refractometers, and that we actually got to, and I have one here, I'll play with it with you, Karen, sometime, where we actually get to see, like on the calcite, the lines jump and different things happen analog, not just you put something on a machine and it gives you a readout. Because right now, even we're like, I've been phased out. Anything that I could do by eye, you can now do by equipment, put it on and it gives you a readout. But you don't know what you're looking at. In other words, the people taking the refractive index and double refractive and different things, they just know how to correspond it to a chart. They're losing touch. Like, we completely have lost touch with what the data means compared to what the readout means. Like, again, most of the thing, it's everything else. It's like so much that we talk about are optical effects. So polarity and things like that, they're optical effects, and we explain it down to math and give you math readouts, and we forget to look at it as what it really is, an optical effect. Like, again, the Faraday effect is nothing but an optical effect, and yet people confuse it to you by teaching it to you as math when I've taken the Polaroid filters, I've crossed them for you, and you can see it's optical. What the math is doing is describing what's already there.
Yeah,
And
I think woo for me comes down to how observable is it, and so dark matter, dark energy, that's all woo woo to me because you can't observe it.
It is woo woo. It's not. Yeah.
But I think with crystals, there are certain people who kind of take it in one way and other people who take it in a completely different way. And so I've heard of like the whole magnet healing kind of a thing. And like, if there is no observations to back that up, then I'm going to say that's going to seem woo to me because I don't see any foundation for that claim. You know what I mean? But once I start to see the foundations, then that's when it stops being woo.
Woo, right. And that's where, again, you have to, the testing and repetition, and you don't know until you try it type of thing.
I took a biomagnetism class, by the way.
Uh-huh.
I have some of those biomagnets. If you want to, I should bring them to the next event.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the thing there is people just don't have the experience to establish as a foundation. They're just kind of like, oh wow, they just see the effect, but they don't see the cause and all that other stuff that was underneath it. And so for me, that's kind of like, yeah, it's so much of NASA and their textbooks. They're making all these claims, and then you just don't see any foundation for it. But once you start to like see the foundation in certain claims, that's when it stops being woo-woo.
Yeah, this is where really, again, we've lost the foundations right now. What we've been told about rocks and everything is they formed billions of years ago. They're all done. It's all over with. And again, our foundations don't seem to line up at all with our reality. So that's what this has to do with flat Earth, because I think it's part of the, again, very much part of the agenda, that when you see how it works and how you'll get the plates and the shape, again, it's all going to tie back into flat Earth and the way it works.
Yeah, and I look at this whole crystals go to war kind of video that you're showing us here, and those kind of people really knew the foundations to this stuff. And now people don't, like, very, very few people today know about the foundations to these kind of claims. Oh, well, my phone turns on and that's all I need to know. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
That's how I see it too. That's how I see looking back at the ruins too, and looking at, I'm sorry to interrupt on this.
Oh, you're fine.
But if you right now, like we talk about the Stone Age people with the spears and the wood tools and, you know, things like that, and because we found these fossils, and all I can think of is that if you turned off the electricity, we'd be Stone Age like that a while until we figured it all out again, because nobody knows how to do anything anymore. I mean, it's truly, it's tied out of it. And so in previous civilizations, I know with like finding, like I have at home, any of you guys that have seen my Chinese magic mirror that I've showed you and things like that, this is technology that's hundreds of years old, that we're discovering now again. We sit there, how much of this with on the buildings and that, how much on growing things and doing things, again, with the different ways of looking at things, what makes us think we have more technology now? I think the way that we do it is very clumsy. The reason that we have power lines and the reason that we have a lot of the infrastructure that we have is simply for billing purposes, for financial.
Yeah, it's not the most efficient way. We're wasting a lot.
We're wasting things on doing it so we can measure and bill people for it. But when we sit there and say, oh, they didn't have the infrastructure, they didn't have the lighting, they didn't have that, we don't know that. They, again,
maybe they just did it a lot more efficiently and didn't need all the wires connecting everything together.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap this up. I think we got about 5 minutes left to go on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a great one, Karen. Good find.
Lower the frequency of the crystal by altering certain atomic properties of the quartz itself. The amount of frequency change is governed by the length of exposure to the X-ray beam. The operator times the exposure to give the desired change in frequency, and the crystal is then removed from the X-ray unit, placed in its holder, the frequency measured again as a check. The recovered crystals are now added to the stock which did not need the X-ray treatment, and all are ready for their final factory tests. The activity and frequency of each crystal are measured and recorded while it is being subjected to temperatures ranging from -55 to +90 degrees centigrade. Air circulating over dry ice in one part of the box simulates temperatures in the stratosphere. Heating units in another part of the box bring the temperature up to heights much greater than those expected under normal operating conditions. The performance of each crystal is measured every 2 degrees over the temperature range, and a complete record of it is made. Thousands of crystals are tested this way every day, for upon these and other tests depend the certainty and accuracy of radio communication and the lives of American airmen and those of our allies. The record charts of each crystal are checked. Those that pass are okayed and sent on. Any crystal whose chart indicates a failure within the temperature range is rejected. At the completion of the temperature test, a final production test is made to see that the holder is tightly sealed against leakage. The crystals are plugged in groups of 60 into a rack, which is enclosed in a glass vacuum chamber covered with wire mesh for protection.
Faraday cage.
The air is pumped out as shown by the changing level of the mercury manometer. A potential difference of more than 1,000 volts is placed across the electrodes. If the holder leaks, an ionization current registers on the dial. By means of a selector switch, the operator can measure each of the 60 crystals in turn.
Now that machine comes in one that'll fit in your
At
pocket.
the completion of the measurements, air is let back into the vacuum chamber. When room pressure is attained, the bell jar is lifted and the crystals removed. The crystals are next turned over to the signal core inspectors. They first undergo electrical inspection, where the units are tested in standard test sets, which simulate the actual conditions under which they will be used in radio sets. When they pass the electrical tests, they are sent on for mechanical tests. The inspector examines each case, looking for any irregularities. Upon completion of the final signal core inspection, the crystal units are packed. Each crystal unit is placed in a separate box. Before closing the cover, another inspector checks to be certain that the frequency marked on the box is the same as that marked on the crystal unit. The boxes are then closed. The final signal core check is made in the shipping room as the cartons are filled and sealed. When a carton has been filled, the emblem of the signal core is stamped on each seam, the emblem of approval, the emblem under which crystals go to war.
And I love the crackling in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I miss that. Very cool. That was Crystals Go to War 1943.
Yep.
Archive.org details on the YouTube chat or in the description. All of these will be in the description down there, the ones that we've covered. We're going to have to do another one because we didn't get, I know we've showed a couple of these before, but
Mm-hmm.
Archive.org is amazing. I've been having a lot of fun with that ever since I discovered I could start uploading videos to
I
that.
love these little
Yeah.
growth videos because they show you, crystals actually grow in a spiral. I have a PDF that talks about it, and Marcel Vogel talks about it in some videos. But when it's wrapping around like really rapidly, you know.
And these ones are
So
perfect.
right here, look at this one. This
Yeah.
one here kind of shows it a little bit.
Oh, wow.
mhm. That's wild.
Yeah.
And the part that I found really interesting on that first video, the guy was saying, even if the edges aren't straight, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it straightens them out. So it's not like it's just adding on a layer to something that's already there and keeps adding it on. It's actually like fixing.
It's trying to repair and go and
Yeah,
exactly.
it's trying to
as long as
make
it
it
doesn't.
perfect.
Oh, there are certain minerals that are radioactive. I was actually reading about
Mhm.
one. I forget the name of it. And you poke a hole in it, and it'll heal itself. So
That's
it's
wild.
yes.
Osmium was it osmium?
I forget the name of it. I forget it. I was talking about it on one of my streams, but it was
Green
just
diamonds.
but it was just it didn't look like anything special. Like it wasn't shiny. It's nothing you'd want to put on your finger and be like, ooh, it was just like this reddish brown type of mineral, but happened to be radioactive. Then it heals itself. Like it's just really weird when you start getting into it and start looking at that they are alive. They're not alive. It's alive just like how plants are alive. They're not alive like you and I are alive, but they're alive. Now the minerals, they're alive too. Not like the plants are alive and not like we're
Not like
alive, but
people,
in their
but
own
they-
way. It's like
Yes.
it's a much slower, like longer life. It's like
Well, yeah, like that when the trees were talking in Lord of the Rings, they talk real slow and it takes a really long time, but it doesn't matter because they got a really long time to live.
right.
So rocks are even slower than that. The minerals are even slower than the
Yeah,
trees.
yes.
So we can't even understand if they were talking. It'd just be like,
And I don't believe that they can be aged. Like everything is
Mhm.
so it's
Correct.
all their aging and their carbon dating and their radio whatever that they want to say to age rocks to 100,000 years or a million whatever. You can't age them, and it's like they're immortal. They don't really die. They're just always here.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
And
crazy
they're
when you
growing
think
all
about
around
it.
us. But you're right. Again, it's like they're always here, but again, they're constantly growing. And I do, again, the more you look at the aging of it, the more absurd it gets. Almost as absurd as the story Zach told me about the radio signal earlier that hit us from how many 80 billion light years away.
Oh, no, it was like 8 billion light
Oh.
years away, and they're sending radio signals to Earth. And it's like, yeah, but Earth wasn't even here supposedly 8 billion years ago, right? Isn't it only like 5 billion years
Mhm.
old or something like that? So
And
they
again,
said,
every
They don't
I
even
believe
know.
there's going to be a planet that has life on it in this solar system in 8 billion years. So I'm going to send
years.
the radio frequency now.
And
Yeah.
it's not going to degrade or no problem with that.
Right? The signal's going to stay strong.
Yeah, I'm smelling NASA
No
there.
delay.
So
Yeah,
that
kind of
was,
like. Oh, go ahead, Zach. Because these are black and whites that are just fabulous of different crystals growing that I figured Karen could talk through and have a blast with.
Mhm.
And again, these are old school. New school ones are pretty too, but I'm showing you that
well,
this
we
is.
could, how about we do another one next week? Because we're coming up on 2 hours here, 9 o'clock, and I got to be up to do a show at 5 a.m.
We can do that, and we can even again. I know Cal wanted to go in a different direction too, and we can again.
Well, how about next
It
week?
is-
We'll just set it right now. Will be Crystals Part 3, and we can
Okay.
just keep expanding upon this.
All right,
Absolutely.
Okay.
that works. That sounds great, you guys.
All righty. So yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed that one. I learned some stuff in there for sure. I had seen the one on the crystals going to war a little bit from Karen's stream, but yeah, the more times you watch informative videos like this, it's like the more you learn.
Yeah.
You see more and more stuff. Yeah. So yeah, this is one that I'm probably going to watch again.
Yeah, I've already watched it a few times.
Karen, it took me out of my funk. It took me out of my total depressed funk that I was in at the time and got me like again curious and active. It was something that was desperately needed. I'm working on connecting my brain and that again. And hopefully it will connect, but nothing is more fascinating than again how this realm really works. The beauty of it.
Yeah, I just want to know like where it all started. Like I'm seeing like this humongous domino chain, and I want to know like the very beginning steps in that domino chain and exactly what started that whole series that invented this whole process.
Right. How did they know at that age that cutting it at that specific angle that was again doing it and having aligned with the axis just that
specific,
way?
yeah.
So super specific. And again, right now we can, of course, our technology and our computerization, we can grow and spit them out to that nobody needs to know. You don't have the line of people. And again, these people that did it aren't around anymore.
Yeah. And that really shows you just like how old this stuff is because, it's a trade secret. Okay. Well, how long has it been a trade secret for? Hundreds of years, yeah.
Yeah.
How long have we really known about this stuff but no one's talking about?
Longer. A lot of people. I call
supposedly
this knowledge.
The oldest thing that we know of, the emerald tablets of Thoth. You've heard of these? Hermes Trismegistus, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
He grew them, supposedly. They're emerald tablets, and he grew them. He made them.
I've never heard of them, but I want to see them now.
Yeah, the emerald tablets of Thoth. Hermes Trismegistus. He's supposedly the first alchemist, or the one that released the secret, maybe. I don't know. Ken Wheeler talks about him quite a bit.
This ancient knowledge that, people are blind to.
Yeah, all is from one, is his main premise. Everything comes from one source. Yeah, it's neat when you look into it. But he supposedly grew those tablets way back when. So that knowledge has been, we're not going to know the name of the person who came up with that knowledge. Yeah.
On different things. And, yeah. on
Yeah.
All
different.
these things buried in trade secrets that they don't want you to know about because they don't want you to know their secrets. That's their money.
Kyle, I don't know
Big-
if you know on this one. I know Karen does on Saturday. She does a anti-religious scripture study, which is just breaking down the Bible concordance style, literally word for word, and going over.
I love it. I
the
love it. Yeah, I watched that.
And I was like mind boggled because they were going through like what they were wearing and like the exact written in their garments in order to go in to the holiest of the holies and with the ark and the chainmail. The way they were describing it, they were putting a Faraday cage around themselves.
Mhm.
Again, with your arc and that, it's almost the technology and that if you look at, like, again, the stones you bring in and the metal and the way you do it, it points to, again, Karen, it hit you that way too, didn't it? On the
Yeah.
things, but so many different ways. When you relook at it, look at the descriptions and what they're using, and then apply what practical properties these items have.
Yeah, because it's like a schematic the way it lays out. X amount of
Mhm.
this laid out this way, and all these connectors have to be brass, and these all have to be silver. And this one has to be gold. And, it's very specific.
It's a
Right.
big, huge revelatory thing because in this instance, this is all kind of them receiving revelation on exactly how to build it. And so, yeah, that's kind of one of those things. Is like, how often does this happen? Yeah, all these little backstories of where they're getting their information from.
So it's been around again. I would say again with the polarized light and the different ways of looking things into this, I would call all of this, and that would be another fun show to do. Another one that we can go into is like the occult symbology and how you can start taking occult technology, and if you put properties to them. I start with just calling the pillars. Whenever I have pillars, I call them dipoles. And all of a sudden magic starts happening.
Oh,
But we'll
yeah.
get there on a whole different scale.
Yeah. We'll
And
get
leave
to
it on
that
this because I know
on
it's
the
late.
next
Yeah.
show.
All right.
All righty. Well, thank you all for joining us. That was a good one. We will be back next Thursday with more talking crystalline knowledge. We'll do part 3. Hope you enjoyed the show. Yes. What do you have coming up this week, Karen? I know you have your anti-religious scriptures on Saturdays and coffee talk on Mondays. Is there a possible coffee talk Friday coming up?
Maybe.
Maybe. Depending on how you're
Yeah.
feeling.
Ambition.
Yeah.
I know it's been because I'm in the middle of getting ready to like move everything around.
Oh yeah, you're doing the studio. That's right.
Yeah, and like right now, even I'm not even sitting down. I'm standing here. I took the chair out of my office. But I don't know. Maybe
Okay.
we'll see. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, I have to see how I feel. If I feel like I'm up for it, because I have a lot to do. But
Yeah, I hear you.
I can't make any promises. Not
And
right
big
now.
shout out again, Commercial Sound and Video, FE Nation, Justin Johnson, and Taking Back Eden. Thank you all for the support. Love you guys so much.
Yeah,
We
you guys are the
appreciate it.
best. The 7 hermetic principles are just good ways to nutshell how it really works. Yeah, how reality works.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting read. Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And Kyle, what do you got coming up this week, sir? What can we be expecting?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm getting ready to finish up this next one on the Flat Earth News and just kind of watching the top 10 and more. I'm going all the way. My list goes past 100. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Nice.
it's huge. But I'm not going to get all of that in the video. I can barely keep track of 30 of them in the videos anyway. But that's what I'm really excited about because, man, it takes a lot of time and effort to get this done. But as soon as that's done, though, I really, really, really want to do this. I've been talking to my wife here, and we want to get the Modern Earth Science Destroyed series going again, and that's what I'm really looking forward to. As soon as this January news edition is done. We're going to be talking about longitude and latitude, the two topics that, like, it seems really, really obvious. Like, all flat earthers should be talking about that, because that's what the flat earth map is demanding. It's saying the flat earth map just looks at the globe and says, you got longitude all wrong. And I've got a whole stack of research I did on this some time ago that I've just been sitting on, waiting for a good occasion to bring it out, and I'm ready for it.
All right. I can't wait, man. Sounds good.
It's gonna be fun, because I can really demonstrate just how messed up longitude really is.
I can't wait to see it. Awesome. And Cami.
Oh, what do I have? I'm still trying to get my mind working and everything together. So we'll do that. We've got the GLOBEBUSTERS show. I'll be in the chat on Sunday. Friday night, Iron Realm Media. And I'm working on connecting my brain. We'll even see if this show's over this way. But yeah, we've got
I might come see you Saturday.
definitely puzzle. And does that show up at all on there?
Yeah. Lots
my
of puzzles.
been doing trying to connect the visuals, my mind, and that thinking together again, getting it where my brain feels like it's working good. We have a metal detector and treasures to hunt for and rocks to carry, and I'm hoping very much you come over this weekend between the things, because it's time to lighten up. It's starting to get more light ups, and let's carry forward. Let's get some excitement going.
Absolutely. And you can find me over at Iron Realm Media. We're on our backup channel on YouTube right now, Iron Realm Media Podcast. We've been bad saying stuff that they don't want us to say. So yeah. And for
So
videos
easy.
that are like 2 years old and stuff, it's like, really?
That's what I
Come
worry about.
on.
Like Mark was telling me, because we got we did the little thing to get the warning that's been up for like 3 years removed, and I'm like, yeah, watch we'll see how long that lasts.
Back up your content and
Oh,
archive.
yeah, we
your
have it all backed
amazing
up,
one.
but it's
Yeah.
just we're thinking of just erasing it as soon as we finish the show, just erase it. And then they can't strike us.
Yeah, I just got one today from, I think, a year and a half ago. And that's really, I did want to apologize to everybody. I've been not talking on either one of the chats. If you'll notice, I'm inside, not outside, which I'm not happy about, but it's cold outside, 47 degrees or 41, too cold for me. Hopefully again in a month or two when I'm outside, I'll go back to my multiple screens and my computer setup that I'm used to. I still go out and freeze out there a little bit, but much happier out there and having my normal setup. So I'm sorry I haven't been able to jump over screens.
And you can find us at freeworld.fm, the Iron Realm Media show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. And there's some pretty cool channels over there at freeworld.fm now. Billy Ray's starting to get the lineup. I know Wayne McCroy's been over there for a while doing his thing. And he's just amazing. That guy's a machine.
Yeah, Wayne does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He's good.
But we have fun. Melodome is over there now. They started doing their show Wednesdays at 7 a.m. right after our show. And I think they go for an hour, he and Chris. But yeah, it's fun. I love their chat section because it has GIFs and you could type in anything. And then like the GIF machine is like connected to some AI sentient being or something, because it will give you like 20 GIFs for whatever you put in. So when I'm there, I speak in GIFs now. It's fun. And we get to play music, like whatever we want. I can't believe we're not getting struck on YouTube for the music we're playing. It's crazy. But we're playing like, Pearl Jam and, stuff that we shouldn't be getting away with at all. But we play it on freeworld.fm.
Well, they don't strike you on YouTube. You just can't monetize your video.
Oh, yeah, we're not monetized anyway. So, yeah, okay, then
So
it's
then
fine.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. But yeah, no, but yeah, Free World, it's awesome. We get to play whatever we want over there. So we have like some days we'll do country and then some days we'll do rock. I played I forget now. It's gone. Queensryche.
I'm gonna have to get a lot more liberal with my music there when it comes to.
He's looking for
choices of
silent
what-
lucidity.
Yes,
whatever I want.
silent lucidity. It's kind of like a Pink Floyd vibe, but it's a cool song. And we played that one this week. There's a bunch of songs that we play over there. It's fun, a lot of fun. So yeah, if you're up that early, 5 a.m. Eastern, I know. Yeah, most of our people in the chat are from across the pond until they start waking up slowly and coming into chat. We got a few early birds.
Actually, what is it? 2 o'clock on the West Coast? I
Yeah,
think
2
with our
a.m.
group,
West
you're probably better
Yeah.
off saying, "Hey, West Coast, 2 a.m. Be up for it." 'cause I
Actually,
think that's
sometimes
easier.
I'm awake that early and I do hear the show. I'm not in chat, but I have it on sometimes.
Yeah, you'll even jump in chat every once in a while.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I see you.
Karen, your strange world. I've been guilty of not being in the chat just because I put it up on the TV thing, and I watch Strange World like
That's
laying
okay.
in
You don't
bed
need to
'cause
be
it's
in
10
chat.
o'clock.
I love that show. It's good.
I love Strange World. I like doing Strange World because I get to hang out with Mark every week, and
Yeah,
I like
he's
Mark.
You guys are so much fun
Yeah.
to watch.
Yeah, it is good times for sure. All right, everybody, that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for joining us. This was GLOBEBUSTERS Tech Crystalline Knowledge Part 2. We will be back next week with Part 3 of Crystalline Knowledge. Remember, be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind because there's truth inside. Peace out, everyone.
Peace.
Peace out.
Peace.